Have you ever wondered if the people closest to you are hiding something? Something so strange that it could change your life forever. This is the story of David, a humble man who believed he had found true love until he discovered a secret that shook his world. David was a simple farmer who lived in a peaceful village called Greenhill. Everyone knew him as a kind-hearted man with a gentle smile and strong hands from years of working the land. But despite his good nature and hard-working spirit, David was lonely. He often watched the couples in the village laugh and share stories by the fire, and he dreamed of finding a wife to share his life with. One bright morning, as David was returning from his farm with a basket of yams, he heard soft humming near the river. Curious, he followed the sound and saw a young woman sitting by the water. Her beauty took his breath away. She had dark, shining hair, skin smooth as silk, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. David hesitated, unsure if he should speak to her. But before he could turn away, she looked up and caught his gaze. "Hello," she said, her voice light and cheerful. David cleared his throat, feeling shy. "Hello. Are you new here? I've never seen you before." The woman nodded. "Yes, I just moved to Greenhill. My name is Sarah. I came to stay with my relatives." David introduced himself, and they started talking. Sarah told him she had grown up in a distant town but had always loved the quiet countryside. David found himself drawn to her kindness and the way she laughed at his simple jokes. From that day on, David and Sarah became friends. They often met by the river, where they talked for hours about their dreams and hopes. Sarah admired David's hardworking nature, and David was charmed by Sarah's warm personality. The villagers began to notice their growing closeness, and whispers spread like wildfire. "They look perfect together," said one woman at the market. "David is lucky to find such a beautiful wife," another added. Encouraged by the villagers' support and his own feelings, David decided to propose to Sarah. He spent days planning the perfect moment. Finally, on a full moon night, he led Sarah to a clearing in the forest where fireflies danced like tiny stars. "Sarah," he began, his voice trembling. "Since the day I met you, my life has been brighter. I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, David. I will marry you." Their wedding was the biggest celebration Greenhill had ever seen. The villagers came together to decorate the square with flowers and lanterns. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed into the night. David and Sarah exchanged vows under the old oak tree, promising to love and cherish each other forever. Life as a married couple seemed perfect. Sarah quickly adapted to life in the village, helping David with his farm and cooking delicious meals. The villagers adored her, often praising David for choosing such a wonderful wife. But as the months passed, small, strange things began to happen. One evening, David came home earlier than usual and found Sarah in their room, hurriedly locking a wooden box. When he asked what was inside, she smiled nervously. "It's just some old belongings from my past. Nothing important." David felt a flicker of doubt but decided not to press her. After all, everyone had secrets, didn't they? Another time, during a village festival, Sarah excused herself early, saying she felt unwell. But when David returned home later that night, she was sitting by the fire, looking perfectly fine. "Are you feeling better?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, avoiding his eyes. "I just needed some rest." These moments were like tiny cracks in their perfect life, but David loved Sarah too much to question her. He convinced himself that everything was fine until the day he found the note. One rainy afternoon, as Sarah was out running errands, David decided to fix a broken shelf in their room. As he moved things around, a folded piece of paper fell from Sarah's wooden box. Curious, he opened it. The note was written in shaky handwriting and read, "You must tell him the truth before it's too late. Secrets don't stay hidden forever." David's heart pounded as he read the words. Who had written the note? And what truth were they talking about? When Sarah returned, David couldn't hold back his questions. "I found this note," he said, showing her the paper. "What does it mean? What truth do you need to tell me?" Sarah's face turned pale. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Then she took a deep breath and said, "David, there's something I've been meaning to tell you, but I didn't know how. Please trust me when I say I love you and never wanted to hurt you." David felt a lump in his throat. "What is it, Sarah? Just tell me." But before Sarah could speak, there was a loud knock at the door. It was the village chief, looking grave. "David, we need your help," he said urgently. "A group of strangers has been spotted near the village. They look dangerous." David reluctantly left with the chief, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Little did he know, the truth about Sarah would soon reveal itself, and it would be more shocking than anything he could have imagined. David couldn't focus as he walked with the village chief. His mind was filled with Sarah's words, "I love you and never wanted to hurt you." What truth could she possibly be hiding? His thoughts were interrupted when they reached the edge of the village, where several men stood holding weapons. These strangers were seen wandering too close to the farms, the chief explained. "We think they may be planning to steal or cause harm." David nodded and joined the other villagers in questioning the strangers. They claimed to be travelers just passing through, and after some negotiation, the chief allowed them to stay the night under close watch. But as the situation calmed, David's unease only grew. He needed to know what Sarah was hiding. When he returned home, Sarah was waiting for him by the fire. She looked tired and anxious, as though she had been debating whether to run or stay. "Sarah," David said firmly, sitting across from her. "I need the truth. No more secrets. What is it that you're hiding from me?" Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for his. "David, I've never wanted to deceive you, but I'm not who you think I am." David's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Tears filled her eyes. "David, before I came to this village, my name wasn't Sarah. It was Samuel." The room seemed to spin as David tried to process her words. "Samuel? What are you saying?" "I was born a man, David," Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. "I always felt like I didn't belong in my own body. I didn't fit the expectations of my family or society, and I couldn't live that way anymore. So I left my old life behind and started fresh here as Sarah." David stared at her, his mind racing. This person, his wife, the woman he loved, was telling him something he could barely comprehend. You lied to me," he finally managed to say, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to," Sarah pleaded. "I thought if I could live as Sarah, I could be happy. And then I met you, and I fell in love. I was afraid of losing you if you knew the truth." David stood up, unable to sit still. Anger, confusion, and betrayal swirled inside him. "How could you do this? How could you let me believe you were someone you're not? I'm still the same person, David, Sarah said desperately. The same person you fell in love with. Please, try to understand. But David couldn't listen. He stormed out of the house, needing space to think. The news spread quickly through the village. Some people were shocked, others were outraged, and a few were curious. The chief called for a meeting to discuss the matter, as the villagers argued about what should be done. She deceived all of us. One man shouted. But she hasn't harmed anyone, another countered. David sat in silence, torn between his feelings. He had loved Sarah with all his heart, but now he felt like he didn't know her at all. The chief finally spoke. This is a matter of trust. Sarah has broken the trust of the village and her husband. But we must also remember that everyone deserves a chance to explain themselves. That evening, David returned home, where Sarah sat quietly by the fire. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. David, she said softly, I'll leave if that's what you want. But please, let me say one last thing. David nodded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear more. I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah began. My whole life, I felt like a prisoner in my own skin. When I came to Green Hill, I thought I could finally be free, finally be myself. And then I met you. For the first time, I felt loved and accepted. I was so afraid of losing that I kept my secret. But I see now that I was wrong to lie to you. Her words touched something deep inside David. He remembered the laughter they had shared, the kindness she had shown, and the love he had felt for her. He realized that, despite everything, Sarah had never stopped being the person he had fallen for. Sarah, he said slowly, I don't know if I can forgive you yet. But I also don't want to lose you. I need time to think. Sarah nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Over the next few weeks, David wrestled with his emotions. He spoke to the chief, who offered wise counsel. David, the chief said, love is not always simple. It challenges us and forces us to grow. The question is, can you look past what Sarah has hidden and see the person she truly is? David thought long and hard about the chief's words. He reflected on the bond he and Sarah had shared and the life they had built together. Slowly, he began to see that Sarah's secret did not erase the love and kindness she had shown him. One evening, David returned home with a calm determination. He found Sarah sitting outside, watching the sunset. Sarah, he said, sitting beside her. I've made my decision. She looked at him, her eyes wide with hope and fear. I don't fully understand what you've been through, David admitted. But I know that I love you. And I want to try to make this work if you have me. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she nodded. Thank you, David. I'll do everything I can to rebuild your trust. The road ahead was not easy. There were challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But through it all, David and Sarah worked together, growing stronger as a couple. They learned that love is not about perfection but about acceptance and understanding. Over time, the villagers began to accept Sarah for who she was. She became known for her kindness and wisdom, and people often sought her advice. As for David, he learned that true love can overcome even the greatest of secrets and that sometimes, the heart sees what the eyes cannot. And so, the story of David and Sarah became a legend in Green Hill, a reminder that love, though complicated, has the power to heal and transform.